All right. So this is Kapitel 6, chapter 6. Okay. Schule. You've seen that word? What does Schule mean? School. Good. Okay. So we're going to be talking about school stuff this chapter. Okay, we'll come back to the Fächer in a second. What do you think Kultur means?
Culture.
Culture. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Fächer is the word for subjects. So today we're going to be talking about school subjects and general culture things, differences between here and there. Okay. Okay, so first the subjects. Okay. Careful on your pronunciation. Try it. Das Fach.
Das Fach.
Good. Okay, try the plural. Die Fächer.
Die Fächer.
Okay, so it almost changes to an E sound. Fächer. Okay. And that just means subject. Okay, try the next one. Das Schulfach.
School subject.
School subject, yeah? Okay. Try the plural. Die Schulfächer.
Die Schulfächer.
There you go. Okay. I think you can already probably tell by looking at the subjects that these are pretty easy ones to figure out what they mean just by looking at them. Huh? Okay. The first one, though, the TH sound in German doesn't exist. Okay, so if you see a TH, just pronounce it like a T. It's a hard T sound. So they don't have the F sound. Okay, so if you hear a German talking in English, they probably have a slightly goofy accent on that.
Yep.
Okay? Okay. So try that first one. Mathematik.
Mathematik.
Okay. What do you think that means?
English.
Okay. Not English. It's not just math, though. What is it? Mathematics. Do you say mathematics?
No.
Neither do they. But the book says it, so that's why you need to recognize it, but it's pretty obvious, okay? They go with the shortened form, which the book doesn't really use, but we're going to do it anyway. Try it. Mathe. Okay, so you use Mathe, and that's fine. Okay, so Mathe is the one that's math.
So on a test, would you want to use Mathe?
If you have to write it out, you can just put Mathe. If you want to put Mathematik, you're welcome to do so. But you need to be able to look at Mathematik and know that it's mathematics. Okay? Try the next one. Physique. Okay, so it almost sounds like you're talking about someone's physique, right? Like how they appear. Okay? But what do you think physique means? Physics. Not physical education, just physics. There is a difference. The next one, depending on the region, will be pronounced a little bit different. So in some places it will be a hard K sound, Kimi. In other places, it'll be a sound at the beginning. Most places it'll be the Okay? So try Chemie. Okay? So you don't need to emphasize the okay? But Chemie. It's almost just like a rush of air. Okay? What do you think Chemie means? Chemistry. There's not a shortened form for that, so you can't just say chem, which sounds more like phlegm, so it'd be funny anyway. But, okay, so sometimes people will say chem. You're like, oh, I got chem homework to do or something like that, but they just use the full chemie. Try the next one, biologie. Okay, shortened form.
Biology.
Bio.
Okay, but I said shortened form. You guys went immediately to English. Shortened form is bio, like it smells. Okay? Okay, so yes, that is biology.
Those are all science.
Hmm?
Those are all science.
That's true. The word for science, which you don't need to know, is Wissenschaft. So be thankful that you don't need to know that word. We'll get into keyboarding and all that kind of jazz. Namely because they don't have keyboarding. So we'll just get into it now. No. Long story short, a lot of the classes that you guys have, like FCS and tech and all those kinds of things, the things where they teach a skill, so to speak,
Yeah.
they don't have them.
Wow.
But we'll get into what they do have that we don't soon.
Is there typing? Like there's the letters that they have that we don't? Like
Mhm.
more keys on the keyboard?
Yeah,
If you, on your iPad even, you can set the keyboard language to German and you see exactly what it looks like. So like Y and Z are flip-flop, they have the umlaut key and the, you know, that kind of stuff. It also helps when you're on your iPad and you have that keyboard set, then it underlines less. So, alright. First one. Try that one. English.
English.
Okay? Only difference is that it adds the C. Otherwise they're spelled the same, pronounced slightly differently. Alright. Next one. You better know this one by now.
Deutsch.
Deutsch.
Spanish?
German.
It's Dutch, right? Yeah, no. Okay.
Deutsch.
Deutsch.
We have English class, they have German class.
Yep. Their German classes work the same way your English classes do. In fact, their English classes work a lot like your English classes do. Because they start taking English a lot younger. So I took, I did a little internship thing in Germany at a high school, and their 11th grade English class, they were reading Great Gatsby. Same as most 11th graders in America do. Just saying. Yep.
It's like a dumb question.
Okay.
So their English class, they teach like books, not English, right? And then they can take English as a language.
They're equivalent. So you take an English class here, and you learn the basis of your native language, or you learn the basis of English, whether it was your native or not. That's their German class. But because they speak German,
Their English class is in German. They learn English.
moving on. All right, try the next one. Geography. Let's try that again. That was weak. Geography.
Geography.
Okay, they abbreviate it as geo. Okay, pretty obviously, geography. They also use a word called Erdkunde, which means study of the earth. But geography is what the book uses, what most people use, so it works. Next one you've seen before, what does it mean?
Music.
Music. Alright, so try that one more time. Musik.
Musik.
Okay, so their music classes are different than ours. In that, for the most part, they tend to focus on how to read music and the theory and the history of music, stuff like that. So they have some band and choir and stuff like that, but nothing like we do here. In particular, not at all like this school does. This school does music, and it does it well, right? But they don't, for example, have marching band. It just doesn't exist over there. Next one is an interesting concept. We don't have this one. It looks a lot like our English equivalent. So everybody try that one. Ethic. And somebody already said it. Ethics. Now, the reason they have this is because they still teach religion in school. They usually give you 2, sometimes 3 different religions that you could choose from as far as taking those classes, so you find one that is closest to your belief system, or you take an ethics class. So if you don't subscribe to a religion, you take ethics. So regardless, the general concept is the same. They're trying to educate you in how to be a good human being in that class.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Try the next one. Kunst.
Kunst.
Anybody know that one?
9.
I wouldn't expect you to. Art. Their art classes are, I guess I'll say, far more basic in their offerings. So Mr. Stanley has a whole bunch of different courses that you could take as far as art goes, you know, like jewelry making and all sorts of stuff. They would not. They would be more of a drawing, maybe sculpture, but they probably don't have a kiln, you know, and stuff like that. They're not going to have jewelry. They're going to be drawing, painting, that kind of thing for the most part. Okay? Try the next one. Latin. Okay? Latin. Okay? Latin is still taught in a lot of German schools. The school we do the exchange with specializes in ancient languages. So they have Latin is a very popular one. They still have Spanish and French and all that jazz. Okay, but they also have ancient Greek and stuff like that, which is pretty awesome, I think. But they're actually known throughout Germany for their ancient language program, which I think is cool. Okay. Okay, try the next one. Sport. Okay, so it sounds like an SH. And that one is Gym, Fayed. Now, major difference between American Fayed classes and German Fayed classes. the concept of teaching pickleball for like a week and a half would never occur to them. Okay? They teach recognized sports, and they do them in units that are long so that you actually learn how to play it decently well. Okay? So a unit on soccer, for example, will probably last a couple months. They do swimming classes. Even the school that we do the exchange with, they don't have a pool. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a German school that has a pool. But they do their scheduling in such a way that it works out that they walk into town to the local pool together as a class, and they have swim class there. It's like a double block period. It's usually butted up against a break afterwards so that they have some extra time, and then walk back. So everybody learns how to swim. So the exchange teachers that we do it with, past several exchanges, they've both been English and FIAD teachers. So they come here and they watch English classes and German classes and FIAD classes, and one of them in particular was just kind of appalled at the system. The other one got happy about everything. Yeah. So he was, oh, pickleball, can I play? You know, I mean, he's that kind of a guy. Yeah. So very, very, very different in how they go about things. Okay. Try the next one, religion. Okay, that one's pretty obvious, I would think. Yeah. Religion, yep. Which religions they offer depends on the region and what religions are most common in that particular location. Okay. Usually Protestant or Lutheran are pretty common ones, but beyond that it varies depending on where you are. Okay. So that one's the same. Hey, try the next one, Geschichte. That is the word for history. It's also the word for story. So you could say, I'm going to tell you a Geschichte, or I'm going to go to the Geschichte class. You know, either way. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's the story of your past. Next one is probably the hardest one of all of them to spell. Okay. All right, try that one. Französisch. French. And the last one on that page. Try Informatik. Guesses?
Study hall.
Doesn't exist.
Nap time.
Exists more than study hall.
Oh, Spanish?
Spanish, you've learned that one. Informatik is computer classes. So, here's the thing about that one. Your like AP computer science classes and stuff like that you have here aren't going to exist over there. Okay, first of all, AP is just not. The concept doesn't. But there are going to be more basic kinds of computer courses. Technology over there is really advanced, but they don't use it in their schools. So, you know, like the school that we did the exchange with, it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago they finally got Wi-Fi for the teachers. Okay? They just this last summer had projectors installed in almost all of the rooms. Okay? They have one computer lab with about 30 computers in it that are all slow. And, you know, I mean, there's all just, they're different. You know, there's only one teacher that is piloting a smart board at this juncture. So it's almost like they let us figure everything out and figure out what works and what detracts, and then they decide if they're going to do it. Okay? So computer classes are going to be more about programming and stuff like that, but they're going to be basic. Okay? These are not keyboarding classes. They would not have a keyboarding class, as we already talked about. Okay? So they're pretty basic ones. All right. This one you don't need to write down the general diagram, but how their school system works is very different than ours. Right? So, first of all, you go to kindergarten. It is a private kindergarten. If you want to go to kindergarten, you pay for it. Same word is used for nursery school or daycare. Okay, so it can be confusing that way. After kindergarten, they go to grade school, literally foundation school. Okay, and that's 1st through 4th grade. So I'd write down grade school, 1 through 4. You could just write down grade school in English. Right? In 4th grade, they start looking at your grades, how you're doing, are you still eating glue, or are you playing well with others, you know, that kind of thing. How your reading and writing and math are coming along. And they decide which kind of school you're going to go to after that. Okay? So unlike here where you go through, you know, 5th grade and then you just all go to the same kind of middle school and everybody goes to middle school and then you all go to the same kind of high school. You might go to a different high school, but they all function generally the same. Okay. Here you have three choices. You could go to the Hauptschule, the Realschule, or the Gymnasium. It's not a gymnasium. It is gymnasium. It is a type of school. So this is 5th through 12th. Oh, it's kind of hard to read. 5th through 12th grade. If you are in the higher academic classes, AP, Honors, CIS, automatically, the equivalent, you would be going to this kind of a school. If you are doing well in your, we'll call it mainstream, regular, or whatever kind of classes, so you're in like regulars English 9 or whatever, but you're doing well, you could still be going to that school. It doesn't have to say Honors or AP or whatever in front of it. Okay? But that's for the top roughly 35 or so % of the population, give or take. Those people are college bound. Okay? So that is a huge, huge, huge thing. This is the only school where you have to graduate from that school or that type of school in order to go to college. Okay? If you aren't going to one of those other schools, it doesn't mean you're not going to end up with a great profession or whatever. Okay? So I think you can all agree there are some professions that you need further study in, like a doctor, right? Okay? Kind of a requirement. Please, please, please make sure that my doctors are people who are educated beyond 18 years old. Okay? I think we all want that. There are other professions, though, where you need a great deal of training, but college is not the place to do it necessarily. Or it may not need as much training, or it's more specific. Right? One of my favorite examples for the Realschule, I really need to not write in blue, is a mechanic. There are a lot of different requirements to become a mechanic. It takes a great deal of attention to detail, specific training. You know, think about all the different types of cars, and while they all kind of operate generally the same, they all have different quirks to them and how they work. Okay? That one is going to require training, but it's not the kind of thing that you would necessarily need a 4-year degree for. Right? So what they do is you go to the Realschule, and once you turn 16, so after 10th grade usually, you start your apprenticeships, your internships. So if you're looking to become a mechanic, you go out and you train with a mechanic instead of sitting in a classroom learning pre-algebra or pre-calc or whatever. You learn things that are relevant to your future career, which is a really cool concept. You know, I would guess there are people in this room that are college bound and people that aren't. Okay? So why shove you all in the same room and expect the exact same thing of you? You know, if everybody as a senior has to take econ, why? Who would it help? Who would it not help? You know what I mean? So they track you based on where you're kind of heading. So mechanics, bank tellers would be another kind of person who would go to that place. You know, so you need further training in math and numbers and maybe statistics or something, but you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree. Okay? The Hauptschule is the same general concept. That one you don't go to for quite as long, but you still, when you finish that, you go on to another kind of training. This would be more along the lines of a salesperson. So sales in Germany is still a trained profession. So if you go to a clothing store or whatever, you're going to see a bunch of people who are trained to be salespeople, not a bunch of teenagers having part-time jobs. Very different. Okay? So they track you appropriately. And in the first couple of years, so 5th, 6th grade, they keep a closer eye on you. They call them the Orientierungsstufe, so the orientation level. So if you are misplaced, like maybe 4th grade just wasn't your year. You figured out not to eat glue anymore once you got into 5th grade. You can switch different levels of school. Likewise, if you're put in the gymnasium and you're just not quite up to that, then you can move down. Or you figure out, hey, you know what, I really like cars, I want to be a mechanic or whatever. Okay? So you can shuffle around. It's just harder to do after 6th grade. Then you have to have agreement from all sorts of people and blah, blah, blah. Okay? But it's at the end of the gymnasium that they have the big test. The big test, it'll be written on the next page. It's called the Abitur. So, yeah, it'll be on the next page or so. So you'll see that you have to pass that test to go to college. So if you finish the Realschule or the Hauptschule, you can take like makeup courses to be able to take the Abitur, but it's a lot harder and you really have to kind of push yourself because there's no schooling geared towards that. You just have to go out and take the classes of your own fruition. Okay? But it's a kind of an interesting thing, you know. Wouldn't it be nice if you knew you weren't college bound, be fully trained for your job by the time you're 18?
Yeah.
I'd be all right with that. All right. Moving on. This is a sample schedule. You don't need to write this down. Okay? But you see, Stundenplan means schedule. So then I just put in Anya as a sample name. Klasse is 10th grade. and this tells you which semester, literally half year, so first semester. Okay. But there are some pretty major differences between our kind of a schedule and their kind of schedule. Raise your hand if you can tell me one. Yep.
They're like each day they have a different class, like
Mhm.
each period and each day a different class.
Yep. So Mondays all look the same. Tuesdays all look the same, but Monday and Tuesday don't look the same. Which really weirds them out when they come over here. And what do you have first period? Math. What do you have first period tomorrow? Math. Wednesday? Math.
So when,
Thursday?
so when they come over, they actually have their own schedule and walk around.
They follow around their host. So if you had a German, your German would stick with you and follow you around to all your classes.
What if there's like a Monday without school? They just don't do that.
Yeah, just Monday's totally gone. The other thing that's goofy, I forgot to tell the second period this too. If, like, say, physics. Maybe my physics teacher is out sick that day. You just don't have class. You walk in and there's like a little monitor, or sometimes old school schools will just put up like a piece of paper on the main doors or whatever. Usually one on the physics door or whatever that says, you know, zweite Stunde fällt heute raus. So second period isn't happening today. They don't do substitutes unless they know that the teacher's going to be gone for a few days or longer. You know, like if they're on the exchange and they miss a week of school, all the other physics teachers or whoever would fill in. So they'd each take like one class period. So very different, which is kind of nice. You had your hand up earlier.
Oh, for the
Differences. What else?
the days.
The day is longer. Mm-hmm. Is it longer every day though?
No.
No. So these are random times. Okay, so the 8:05 just happens to be that school. The school we do the exchange with, they start at 7:30, just as you guys. But these were, the P stands for Pause. So they have breaks school-wide every day at that same time. Okay, so the first one is usually a little bit shorter. You know, most places are 10 to 15 minutes. This one happens to be 20 minutes. Okay, the second break is usually a little bit longer. This one happens to be shorter, so they flip-flopped. Okay? But it's a time where you go out and people will go be, you know, playing in the courtyard or a soccer game or whatever. They'll play. They have these outdoor ping pong tables all over the place. They're made of like cement and stuff like that. They're huge and they're heavy. So people just bring tennis balls and use the tennis balls in their hands to play ping pong. It's kind of funny. So they just go out and kind of move about, get some blood flowing again. Okay? Sometimes the custodians, for some reason, I don't know why they always do this, but local bakeries will bring in a pile of things that they could sell. You know, like breads and rolls and desserts and whatever else. And for some reason, the custodians frequently are the ones who sell them. So you can go buy a little snack or whatever else. Okay? But this right here, the M stands for Mittagspause, midday break. That's a lunch break. Look at how long that lunch break is.
It's pretty long.
That's 55 minutes. Okay? That's a short lunch break by German standard. Because the one that we do the exchange with is like an hour and a half, 2 hours, I forget. But it's up there because you notice there's nothing here, there's nothing here, there's nothing here. Usually 3 days a week, give or take, you get to go home as soon as lunchtime hits. How sweet would that be? So you would be done, you know, by 1:25 if you had this person's schedule, 3 days a week. Okay? You go home. A lot of people will go into town, eat lunch with their friends or whatever else. Other people will go home, eat with their families, whatever it might be, because lunch is still their big meal of the day. Okay? But on the days that they do come back, regularly those are the classes that are a little bit more time intensive. So they'll frequently put, you know, Phy-Ed or like a chemistry because they have lab, you know. They'll double up the periods so that you can get more done. You can get your full soccer game and you can get your full lab done in one sitting instead of prepping everything one day and then hoping nobody messes with it before the next day. You know, that kind of thing. Okay? So, very different. But you also notice there are some random empty spots. These are the time frames you guys would have study hall. But they don't have study hall. It doesn't exist. If it's empty on your schedule, you don't report to anybody. You can go sit in a quiet corner, you can go work on something, or you can pop into town, go to the bakery down the road, go get an ice cream, whatever. Nobody cares. So it's very different. And since these schools are 5th through 12th, you have 5th graders through 12th graders all running around just willy-nilly at that point. So most people will pop into the computer lab or something like that and work on something that's necessary, but yeah, you don't report to a teacher for that period. Okay. Moving on. So major differences. Jot down something about these. These are my bullet points so that you can, or so I can remember what to talk about. Grades. Their grades are numbers. So more like what you were used to in elementary school. You know, like the 1 through 4 thing.
Yeah.
Everybody have that?
I did.
Most people. Except their numbers are flip-flopped. So 4s in grade school are hard to get from my understanding. Okay? So if you got one, it means you were excelling like, woo, super well. Okay? It's not the equivalent to an A in high school, where an A in high school is like a third of the class gets an A. You know what I mean? Okay?
Yeah.
So grades are 1 through 6.
Jesus.
A 1 is the equivalent to an A. They don't do pluses and minuses, but they do decimals, except they use commas instead of decimals. So you could have like a 1.5 is on its way to a 2. So it's kind of like an A minus. Okay? 1s are very, very, very hard to get. If you have more than 2 people in a class that get a 1 on something, that's weird. Okay? So very different. But if you count it down, 1 is an A, 2 is a B, what's a 3?
C.
What's a D?
4.
But we still have 2 more grades to go. How does that work?
F. E.
5 and 6. We don't have E. Doesn't exist. We have 2 failings. They have 2 failings, which, if you think about it, is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. So we have like 59% of fail in our system, right? So traditionally, 59 and below, that's a fail. There's a big difference between a 59 and a 1, right?
Yeah.
So if I was failing, I'd want people to know I got the higher level failing versus the 6 in this equivalent, which I call the epic fail. Okay? So 5 is a fail, 6 is epic fail. You don't want either, but I'd rather have a 5 than a 6. Okay? The rooms thing. We may have talked about this a little bit. If you guys were all in the same grade, say you were all 9th graders, you would stay in this room and you'd have your 9th grade classes in here together, except for the ones you had to leave for, like Phi-Ed. The teachers rotate, and they come to you. So the rooms are bare, because the teachers all have their stuff with them, because they teach 2 different subjects, and they teach 5th through 12th grade, and they have to rotate through, and their schedule's weird, so they don't leave anything in the rooms, usually. So the walls, if you think, mine is decently decorated, but, think of the cinder block that could be showing. Okay, so theirs is far more bare. Okay? The 11th and 12th grade. If you go to the gymnasium, and in 11th and 12th grade, you start choosing the route of studies that you're interested in. By the time you go to college, you're already announcing what your major is going to be. You do that when you apply, which is weird, for us at least. Traditionally in America, you don't announce that until after you're in college, sometimes for a couple of years. And odds are good it's going to change anyway. Okay? But when they go to 11th and 12th grade, they start saying, I'm really interested in sciences and languages. And then they gear themselves towards that. So they take less of general required classes and start focusing more on which classes they have interest in further on. All right. And we talked about the Abitur already. That was the big test at the end of the gymnasium. Mm-hmm. This is not like an ACT or an SAT. It's brutal. ACT and SAT kind of test your knowledge on how you learn things, and you aren't supposed to have covered everything that's on the test. It's just, have you learned how to imply knowledge and move it forward and make assumptions about things and stuff like that. But the Abitur is based on your knowledge that you've gained over the past couple of years. So it's class specific. So it'd be like, if you had the equivalent here, you'd be taking a test on all of the German that you've learned over the past couple of years. Okay? So it's pretty brutal. And it's a 5-part test. Usually it's 2 orals and 3 written, or vice versa, depending. Okay? But you have to pass it, and you get a grade for it. For each one of those 5 tests, you have to pass it in order to graduate and go on to college. So I think 1 retake is all you're allowed before you have to start going back and taking more classes. So it's pretty intense. So you can't cram, where you're done for. Okay. And we already talked about the Pausen, the breaks. These are the breaks that they have built in through the day. So they don't have passing time usually because you're in the same room already. So it's the teachers who have passing time, so to speak. Okay. But the built-in breaks during the day. Transportation. Students in Germany tend to live a lot closer to their schools. So a lot of them walk or ride bikes. If they live further away than that, they have to have a parent drop them off, or they take mass transit. So they take a bus, but it's not a school bus. So the concept of a yellow school bus is very American, and they get all giggly when they come over here. Because they've seen this in movies, they've read about it in their textbooks, and now they finally get to see one live and in person. Okay? There's a student who was part of the exchange, a German student part of the exchange in 2012. Or he would have been here in 2011. And one of the favorite things to do, for whatever reason, shows you their obsession level, is they take them up to the bus depot up the street. You know, the district bus depot, where when all the buses are parked, it's just yellow school bus after yellow school bus after yellow school. And they go and they take a picture of them in front of the yellow school buses. And this kid from 2012, he and I recently became friends on Facebook, and his profile picture is him in front of the bus depot from 2011. So it's kind of a thing. And then they get all excited and like giddy about riding on the school buses to field trips for the first 2 times, and after that they realize why you guys hate them so much, and they're uncomfortable and their smell, you know. So they figure it out. But they take mass transit buses, so city buses. Once they turn 16, they could get their moped license and rock a moped to school. So there's sometimes moped parking at schools, which is kind of cute. Because they can't drive till they're 18, so most of them have graduated by that point. So anyway, so transportation is very different. Activities is another major difference. How many of you are involved in some type of club or activity or whatever related to the high school? Okay. Now, not a single person in Germany could say the same thing. They aren't related to the school at all. They're all private clubs, you know. So if you did athletics and you lived in Rosemont, for example, you probably did RAAA at some point in time, or familiar with it. That's where they would do their private clubs with. Okay. So rivalries are city to city, not school to school. It's very different. Okay. Let's see. Teachers. The teachers we already talked about, they have to have at least 2 subjects that they teach. Some that I know teach 3 or 4, which I think is just impressive. But the other thing that makes it unique, a little bit different than here, is because you have the same set of teachers 5th through 12th grade, and in a smaller school setting, you know, so like 500 people or something, and the same teachers from year to year to year to year, even if it's between 2 different subjects, you get to know them a lot better. Okay? So it's a very different type of relationship between the student and the teacher over there. It's far, I guess, friendlier might be. I think it's almost family for some of them, depending on the teacher's personality. How many of you have ever used WhatsApp? Couple. Okay. WhatsApp. It's just a texting, messaging, whatever app. So that's their preferred messaging service or whatever through phones and whatnot. And you'll find teachers messaging with their students and stuff throughout the day. You know, like, hey, I'm going to be, you know, late to class. Can you guys go ahead and get prepped and meet me on the soccer field? Something like that. Or vice versa. If the student's going to be late or really didn't understand the homework, that you'll find that they're messaging each other. Here, we're told not to do that. Right? Here, it makes it automatically creepy. Right? So it's a very different scenario, a very different feel. But I think part of that is also related to the fact that students have the onus put on them for their learning over there. If a kid is screwing around in class, the teacher honestly sometimes doesn't care at all because it's up to the kid. The parents are choosing to side usually with the teacher about how things are going. So if the teacher calls home, you are in serious trouble.
Yep.
Okay? The concept of detentions. If you get a detention, kudos, you're the first person I've ever heard of. Okay? So it's a very, very different thing. You are only required to have 2 grades in a gradebook per semester in Germany. So you might have 2 tests and you'd be done. So if you're screwing around in class, it's up to you. Doesn't matter to them. So it's a very different concept. We already talked a little bit about study hall, that they don't have it. The other major thing that they don't have is driver's ed. That's all through private driving schools. Okay. Shane? Okay. Okay, so you will pay a ton of money for driver's ed over there. What do you guys here? Do you pay to take the permit test? Is that it?
Yeah, you pay $302 to take it here.
Okay. How much for the 302? That's adorable. Okay. And how many hours behind the wheel do you have to have? 6?
400 and 500 if you didn't go
Well,
to
you
the
get 6 with the school, but you have to have 15
No,
at
6
night and
6 behind the wheel,
Oh.
like the teacher is at
Okay.
40.
Okay, so you have more hours that you log with an adult, and then you have the 6 with the instructor.
Yeah.
Is that generally? Okay. So, just to give you an equivalent, I believe their current number of hours with an instructor, not just with a parent or whatever, is upwards of 30. Okay, and that includes driving on the Autobahn at night and in the rain. Yeah. Okay. The other major difference is the cost, because it's all through private driving schools. You guys pay $302. They're more like 2,000 to 3,000 euro. So, like, you're looking at probably $2,500 starting. So, it's a big difference. Yeah. Schedule. The only other thing I wanted to point out is that because they have such a big break for lunch, they don't have cafeterias in most schools. So, it's just not even something that they do. In Rottweil, there's like 4 or 5 schools right smack next to each other. Like on the same big block. And they probably about 5-6 years ago or whatever built a common cafeteria that anybody can go to. It's not connected officially to any of the schools. They just call it Mensa, which means cafeteria. So you can go in there and have like I don't know, it's fancier than what you guys have and it tastes better, but it's the general concept. You go through a la carte, pick what you want kind of thing. But it's nice windows, floor to ceiling, you know, and everything else. So it's a lot nicer atmosphere, but you have tons of time to go there and eat. But so, yeah, you don't normally eat at school. All right, some random pictures. You guys have seen some of these before.
Yep.
Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
Anybody remember what it's called? That's a Tafellappen. Tafellappen. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The sponge? Yeah. So they use the sponge, which you can see here, to clean the chalkboard. And this part, this base down here, that's a sliding thing, so it can slide up and down on that. And then both sides open, so they all fold open and shut. And over here, can't tell really, but that's the squeegee. So just like if you're washing a windshield on a car or something like that, and you get it wet first with the sponge side, and then you're over and you squeegee it to get the excess water off. So somebody's assigned that job between each class period. So you can see the chalkboard there. This white section up there, that's where the projection goes. So now they have projectors, you know, and chalkboards. But this was taken in 2006, this picture. So you can see their overhead projector. Very exciting. Those TVs are still in the rooms. Back here in the corner behind these girls, you can see some pipes if you look super carefully. That's a sink. So you can get your Tafellappen wet so that you can wash the board. Okay? Can I tell you a story about, his name is Eric.
Sure.
Can I tell you a story about Eric? We are almost done. Here we go. So, we've talked about these things before. These are those Schultüte, like over here.
Yeah.
The happy cones in the first day.
Yeah.
But just to give you an idea, this is the first day of school, and you can see all the people in the background.
crap.
So this is a stand, a special stand for the Schultüten. Okay, so it's pretty cool. And then on the other side, when you buy a backpack or new notebook or whatever, they frequently will come with these Stundenplans that you can fill in. But now you know why, because can you imagine as like a 5th grader memorizing your schedule for the week? So you fill that in, and sometimes there's a slot for it when you open up your backpack lid and you look inside of it. Okay. And this is the outside of our school, which actually they found out about 20 years or so ago when they were doing construction. It used to be a building used by the Nazis in some way, shape, or form. So they uncovered swastikas and eagles and all sorts of things, which is kind of interesting. And this is their music room. Is evidenced by the drums. So compare their music room to our music rooms, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about as far as differences go. So, good. Dragon? Any questions?